So in the talk of the day, you threw out the concept of zero-based budgeting, which is new for most people. So my first question is, can you define what it means? Because I don't think people know from what I've read the comments, and what it means in terms of pros and cons. And then the second part of the question is, there's also this talk of going to biennial budgeting. So how do you do zero-based budgeting in year one, while we're also doing biennial budgeting, and is there a thought to delay biennial budgeting so you can do zero-based budgeting? Kind of a convoluted question.
No, totally tracked, and it is a good question. So the first part of it, which you didn't add to your question, so I'll make it more convoluted, is the budgeting by priorities, which I talked about, which we as a community will say these are the important things to us, and they'll be ranked and there'll be peer reviews, and so it's not going to be anybody's going to be able to dominate that. So we're going to have these sort of priority areas, and what we're also going to try to do is categorize those by service, by benefit to the community. So instead of like by department, how we budget, which we will still need to do, we'll look at, okay, one of the 5 or 7 buckets is safety or environment or those kinds of things. So then as we budget, we're sort of saying this is what we're willing to invest in that, and here's how we're going to get there. Zero-based budgeting then sort of suggests that you don't start with here's what we spent last year. The consumer price index went up 3%, so I want 3%, and there were, the last 2 years you said I couldn't have new trucks, so I want some new trucks. And it doesn't start that way. It says, here is what we say we want. We've come up with some performance metrics, and then you basically have to sell it and start from scratch. And it's not total scratch, right? Because you want the water to show up, you want the police to show up. But for many of the things, you start from that place of don't assume that it's going to happen. You come in and have to sort of defend. So if this is the amount of money, what do I get? What is the metric that's being used? And that is a part of how the budget then is built. It's not assuming that there's a starting place and the rationalization and how you sort of defend it happens. So zero-based is the concept taken to its extreme, but that's sort of what it is. Instead of starting with what I did before, I'm going to come in and say, okay, this is what we need to do, this is what we're going to get out of it, here's what it'll cost.
Okay, so how do you, my second part was...
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Thanks. So, and it's interesting because when you talk about sort of that annual process and then to say biennial budget in the same paragraph. So the concept is also of biennial budgeting is it's a heavy lift to do budgeting. Many things do go over more years, many of the programs do, many of the services. So you sort of go into it that way. And you do a course correction. So our intention would be that we would do much better monitoring on a monthly basis, do a very heavy look at our budgets in a half-yearly basis, and then that annual review. So especially in this first year, the reality of this first year, these first 2 years, is they're gonna look a lot like annual budgets, even though they'll be put in as biannual, because going into 2025 in the budget situation we're now in, that's a big problem. And we still don't know, what the community will decide for fire and emergency medical protection. So all of those are gonna then impact what goes on in 2026. So these first 2 years will be more painful and look a lot less like what they will look like after that. I could be more vague.
So I'm Joe Scornino, you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm one of those sends emails. But I'd like to hear your recommendations to the public on how we can provide constructive input. Because it seems to me we have this confused system, I'll call it confused system, in that the council is responsible for implementing the ordinances, implementing the laws. And so you would think the public should go to the council if they have comments on what they're implementing, because then the other side, your side, the executive side, then implements it on the ground. But our system is your side with the, whatever you want to call it, aisle, not aisle, but whatever it is. Your side is the one that's proposing the changes to the council. And so for the public, I'm always confused, who should I be commenting to? Those that are developing the proposal or those that are going to adopt the proposal? And how do we, the public, handle it when those proposing whatever the change is aren't hearing the public. And then when we go to the council says, we've heard enough from the public. And we, the public, are left, what do we do now?
That was one of the best descriptions of that problem statement. It was perfect. It was the perfect description of that problem. So I'm sorry you apologized when you started, because you nailed it. You totally nailed the problem. And we have to solve that, right? Because the planning board, gee, do I go to the planning board? Because they're the ones that are going to make a recommendation to the council, and gee, they have a public meeting or a public hearing, so if I talk there, or if I send an email, does that count as much as if I show up on a Tuesday night, right? So we have to make it very clear, and as you heard, sort of my vision is, all those should be equal, right? That if you say something out loud, that counts. But it doesn't count more than the person next to you, and it doesn't count more than the mayor, right? That we all have something in it, but you don't, and I know that people feel that the longer they live here, but you don't get extra points, because of an age or because of how long you lived here. Everybody, listen, you're having a better hair day than I am. So we have to make it very clear, and that was back where I talked about our decision-making process, because what we've done is we've done exactly the opposite. What we've done is say, here is a decision. It's very confusing how it happened, because sometimes that line is blurred or everybody crosses over the line. And then if you don't like it, what happens is, well, I told council and they didn't listen. And then I said it really loud and they didn't listen. So I bought 15 friends and they created an emergency ordinance, so that works, right? We've totally disrupted the system, and now 15 people are deciding policy and creating emergency ordinances. So we need to stop that, and we need to, back to Ray's earlier question about, how do we engage the rest of the community? So it's not the loudest voice, it's not the most frequent voice, or even the most articulate voice. It shouldn't matter what somebody looks like, sounds like, or smells like. They get the same voice as everybody else. And we need to make the process very obvious as to what it is and what those lanes are.
But my question is, what are you going to do
I'm going to
make that happen?
I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. Maybe not tomorrow by noon.
I'm Dan Taylor. You touched a little bit on the competitive audit of what are other cities around us doing? What kind of challenges do they face? I think you were talking from sort of a budgetary standpoint, but I was curious, just what are there other cities from an infrastructural perspective, from an architectural perspective, where they are in the land, where they are in budget? Are there cities that are similar to us, either in this region or around the world? Are there, does this city stick out in being very unique in some regard, whether it's demographic, anything else? I'm just curious if there's anything you've discovered.
Of course we're special. Of course we're special. I'm not finding it. So I'm going to answer that in 2 parts, or 3 parts. One is other cities in our region. And many of the problems that are going on are regional problems. And healthcare, transportation, crime, climate, are not doing a good enough job working those problems. And what I was looking for is, now I'll depress you on a state level. So Washington State has the lowest number of police officers, this is as a state, lowest officer per capita, police officers per capita anywhere in the country. We have fewer hospital beds per capita than any other state in the nation. We have in Snohomish County the fastest increased death rate from fentanyl. We are the 8th worst state for domestic violence. There's more ways that nature could kill you in Washington State than any other state. We are also ranked 7th worst for low-income earners. So we can't fix that in Edmonds. Those are big problems that we have to work as a region on, as we have to work as a state on, and as a country. So there is that. We have all that in common and shared, and we need to be fixing it and doing a much better job of that. In terms of the economic impacts, Everett is, you're going to feel a lot better about our hole. They're about $30 million in trouble, and the city of Seattle is like $300 million. And then of the 75 largest populated cities in the country, 53 of them could not pay their bills in 2022. So this is a big problem going on in a lot of places. The last part of your question is I meet with South County mayors frequently. Frequently, I've been at this 90 days, but I've had several meetings with South County mayors in Everett, Puget Sound Regional Council. I'm on the board of the Snohomish County Economic Development Council. So I'm in any elected official on the state or the national level. I've been in front of them, and the first question I ask is, did you bring your checkbook? So I start every conversation sort of to who else is out there that's smarter than us, that has it, that can either tell us what's failed or what's working, and I don't care where on the planet they are. And I think that's how we ought to approach all of our issues. But I can't give you, I have no clue to be able to tell you sort of who's nailed it on any one of these specific issues. But if you know them, please don't go away. Thank you. Thanks for the question.
My name's Clint Wright. I've lived in this town since I was, off and on, since I was 13 years old. Mayor, you stated that if we don't comply with this latest legislation on housing, we'll lose our property tax and our sales tax. Where did you get that information? What's your source of that?
So that's the risk, and I'm happy to give you this, because and I can send it to others. But this, that's a list of, it also has in it things that you can negotiate and can't negotiate. So that, some of that came from the Commerce Department, some of that came from our consultants, some of it came from our lawyers, some of it came from the county. So I asked the same questions multiple times from multiple sources, and that this is what I have pieced together. And you can see the parts that I was reading out loud, and it's some of it's and it's bill specific. So those were the sources. And again, as I shared, I was not happy with any of this before this happened, and so I was like, what can we do to get an extension? Because you just impose new laws on us, and it would be really nice if we could work on that. You impose things on us that are going to cost us money. You're going to the conflict that you talked about, environment versus meeting these standards. So and three county council people went down last year to meet with the elected officials in Washington, and to try to convince this. But you will notice in that wording, the state feels so strongly about this, they anticipated some of the workarounds, and that's how they came up with it.
Thank you, and thank you for having some accessibility for the people, I think.
I'm Devin Taylor. Two questions. One, you had mentioned that the state in its rules said no more single-family neighborhoods. Does that mean that those of us who live in single-family neighborhoods need to have a concern that some developer may buy the house next door and turn it into an apartment complex or something like that?
Depends on where you live. It depends on where you live. So in all single-family zones in cities of a certain size, Edmonds is concluded, your neighbor could build a second unit on your property. Now, practical question: can they fit another unit on your neighbor's property? This won't happen necessarily. That's why I said it's Seattle's been doing this for a while, and it's kind of been slow to get going because most people aren't interested in demolishing their homes. It does happen though. You maybe live next door to a really big lot. It's a pretty old house, and somebody buys them and says, yeah, I want to take this down and I want to put up 2 units. And within one of those units, I want to put in an accessory dwelling unit because the code allows for that now. That's the mandate from the state though. If you live within a quarter mile of major transit stops, so a lot of our community transit stops are probably not a major transit stop, but certainly Highway 99 with our new Swift lines, if you live within a quarter mile, then you could get up to a 4-plex on a single family lot. So yeah, depending on where you live, that those could be changes coming, so.
Okay, and the second question, completely different. Can you just summarize the wastewater situation and where that is and what our options are?
Sure. So, a while ago, the city was introduced to the concept of the solid waste after it's treated. What do you do with it? And some places it's incinerated, some places it's landfill. And this product, so there's a way to turn it into a solid that is significantly less in volume and in weight, and could actually have market value. So it could be used like as topsoil, like on a golf course or somewhere. It could be used as an aggregate in making concrete. That it's clean and actually is has a value to it. We bought serial number 1. This product, so we're going to either be able to brag that hey, we were first on the planet, or so that because it's the first and you're trying to insert it into an existing system, making that happen because it's system number 1, you got to figure some stuff out. So in some cases, it's the pumps you have may have been used to sort of this wet gelatinous kind of stuff. Now you all have that image in your head. And now it's something else, and so the pump is used to the sort of this flow, and it I'm not good with that, and it blows up and you start over. So they're figuring it out. So now it's operating, we're actually, it feels like we're getting close. We're getting like several days in a row where this thing's behaving itself. So that's a good sign. In the meantime, the state is determined that it wants to change for all of us, for a good reason, the nutrient level of what comes out of wastewater treatment plants into the sound, and they want to change the nutrient levels. Well, that's not going to be cheap. And so all of us are now facing with how do we deal with that on top of this. So we may have a whole new problem shortly as the state imposes that particular, I don't know if you know anything about that one. But anyway, so, but those, at some point soon, I'm hoping, because I know you're going to want to do this, they're going to open up for tours again, and it's truly fascinating. And there's only one room that smells bad. The amount of air, it's the buildings that are there to filter the air it's remarkable how nice it is. But anyway, that's the problem. And in the meantime, in the interest of the environment, we're shipping our poop to Oregon. Thank you.
I was just gonna come up and ask a question, but I think that the organization was hoping to wrap up at 8:30. Is that one? Yeah. Okay. Great. Just wanted to, in case anyone jumps up. So okay. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Alan Townsend. I am on the board of ECR, but I'm speaking as a citizen. I'm also on the Economic Development Commission, but I'm speaking as a citizen. I'm also I'm an individual member of the Chamber of Commerce. No? Okay, so, all right. So Tuesday, I was in the city council meeting, and during public comment, a gentleman came up who clearly English was his second language, and he seemed panicked. He was a business owner, and he seemed panicked that he had just heard that this comp plan thing was going on, and the alternatives being discussed may put him out of business. And he struggled to convey this. It was heartbreaking to be in the audience. And this, I was wondering if you could talk to how can we, one, communicate better to the general population in the languages that they speak, And two, how can we make it more comfortable in the city council chambers to address people who have English as not as their first language?
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up. That it's been weighing incredibly heavily on me. That was a fail. That was a huge fail. And he described it perfectly. This person was listening through his phone to the whole meeting, clearly through real-time interpretation. He got up there, and as many of you know, if you've testified or talked to council, the environment is council listens. It's not a dialogue. So here's this guy struggling to say it and looking for, do you understand? Can you help me? What do I do next? And Todd Tatum, who was our economic development director, I don't know if you saw that, but he went and sat with the guy for a while, and they talked. So there was a one-on-one conversation with him. But therein lies one of our realities. So maybe this is a bad example, but I mailed my face to like everybody in town 7 times, and I can walk down the street and people have no clue who I am, right? So there is no way to reach everybody. Life is full. Different mediums work for different people. It's not the whole is not relevant until the chainsaws show up, that kind of thing. So that's our reality. Our job then is to say, how do we do better? And Roger and I served on the planning board together, and one of the things we both are very passionate about is public engagement, and had proposed, in fact, to council a strategy that said, let's figure out the different categories, because sometimes it's just an FYI. Things are going on, you might want to know. Or we're going to make a war zone in your corner when we're pulling up utility. So that's a different thing. Sometimes we'd like your input. We're just looking for feedback. What are you thinking? Other times can you sit down with us? Can we sort of work this out together? And sometimes we'd like you guys to fix this. So there's like 4 in my head that sort of fall in those buckets. And then there's, now how do I talk to people? And that goes back to that earlier conversation. So going to where people are now, this person, business owner, language challenge, is he even tied to anything? Maybe his neighbors, maybe his church, maybe certain communities do hang out together. I know the Russian community do, the Ethiopian, there are communities that hang out. So we have to start doing a better job of finding those pockets wherever people gather, where they choose to gather, as one of our mechanisms, as well as if we know it's going to impact businesses or business areas, we know where they are, and we can. He's got a hook, so we can go find them. So that was the perfect example of a fail, and we have a vision of what success looks like. Now we just got to go from hither to beyond.
We're getting the sandwich.
All right, so Ray Liao, thank you for volunteering for this project, and our leader-in-chief, elected official number 1 in the city of Edmonds, Mayor Mike Rosen, thank you for volunteering.